Why was the Egyptian Sphinx buried? This question has long worried scientists, historians, and lovers of antiquities. After all, back in the 18th century, local residents did not even suspect the existence of this majestic statue, because it was completely hidden under layers of sand. Only the head may have risen slightly above the surface, and it is not known whether it was noticeable in those days. However, it seems unlikely that a massive structure about 20 meters high and more than 70 meters long was simply covered with sand. After all, if sandstorms covered massive structures so much, then the Great Pyramids of Giza should also have been under the thickness of sand. At least their base. But that didn't happen. The pyramids stand as they were erected, towering above the Giza Plateau, almost unaffected by the layer of sand, while the Sphinx was hidden almost completely. This suggests that either the process of covering up the Sphinx occurred for other reasons, or it was deliberately covered up and then forgotten for many centuries. The Sphinx is a veritable treasure trove of mysteries. We not only do not know who built it, but we cannot even reliably determine when exactly it appeared. On the surface of the statue can be seen traces of erosion, and on the lower parts of the figure they are more pronounced than in the upper parts. The generally accepted scientific hypothesis explains it by weathering. They say that the wind, lifting into the air small particles of sand, gradually polished the stone from which the statue is carved. Such a process is indeed characteristic of desert regions. However, there is an alternative opinion put forward by a number of scientists. For example, Egyptian researcher Sharif El-Morsi, who has devoted more than 20 years to the study of the Giza Plateau, is sure that the traces of erosion on the Sphinx appeared not because of the wind. He claims that in the distant past, the Sphinx was submerged in water for some time, and it was the prolonged exposure to water that left its surface characteristic destruction. According to this hypothesis, the Sphinx may be much older than commonly believed, and the Giza Plateau was once flooded by the sea or a large body of water. While photographing the ancient coastline, I almost fell off one of the stone blocks, Morsi said in an article published on the Jigel Research website. To my surprise, the bump I tripped over was not an ordinary rock ledge, but a fossilized exoskeleton of a sea urchin, a shallow-water marine animal. This fact, in his opinion, is one of the proofs that once there was indeed a large body of water here. If the version of water erosion is true, it could mean that the age of the Sphinx goes back to the depths of time that modern science has not even thought about. Some enthusiasts suggest that the statue may be older than not only the pyramids of Giza, but also the most ancient civilization of Egypt. And if so, who built it? And why? Could it be the heritage of a vanished civilization, about which we have no historical data? Or is it a creation of unknown masters, whose culture was erased by time, and their traces, carried away by the desert sands? It sounds strange, of course, but there is also a theory according to which the erosion on the body of the Sphinx was not caused by wind or mechanical abrasion by sand, but by heavy precipitation or torrential rains that left deep furrows in the limestone. Researchers who support this hypothesis point to the fact that if you look closely at the photos of the statue, you can see that the streaks of erosion have a clearly defined vertical character, as if thousands of years on the surface of the statue flowed streams of water. This discovery contradicts traditional ideas about the climate of Egypt during the last millennia. If we take into account this hypothesis, it turns out that the Sphinx is much older than is commonly believed, because abundant precipitation, capable of causing such erosion, did not fall in this region for many thousands of years. According to paleoclimatic studies, the last time Egypt and its adjacent territories experienced periods of powerful tropical rains about 10 to 12,000 years ago, when there were still stretched savannas, not lifeless deserts. This means that the Sphinx could have existed in those times when the climate of the region was completely different, and its creators may belong to a civilization whose traces have long been erased by time. By the way, another mystery concerning the Sphinx is connected with water. Currently, under its base is constantly pumped out groundwater, the level of which is only 2 meters from the surface. These waters can seriously damage the monument by eroding its base and destroying the limestone rocks. However, a legitimate question arises. Somehow the Sphinx has stood for thousands of years without any consequences, and now it is suddenly under the threat of destruction. Why has groundwater not harmed it for previous centuries, but now poses a serious problem? The presence of water is also often mentioned in discussions when it comes to one of the most intriguing topics related to the Sphinx, the alleged tunnels underneath it. There is a version that under the paws of the Sphinx are hidden ancient underground passages, allegedly connecting it with the pyramids of Giza. However, the official Egyptian authorities have repeatedly stated that there is no network of tunnels under the Sphinx, and numerous sensational discoveries of researchers do not find confirmation. Nevertheless, the interest to this topic does not fade. Zahi Hawass, a well-known Egyptologist, chairman of the Supreme Council of Antiquities of Egypt, engaged in the study and protection of historical monuments, admitted that he himself would not mind to organize full-scale excavations in this area to finally find out what is really hidden under the pyramids and the Sphinx. One of the most intriguing hypotheses is the version of the existence of an underground complex located under the Giza Plateau. According to this theory, in the bowels of the earth may be a whole ancient city with streets, squares, tunnels and halls, which extends for many square kilometers. Perhaps it is there that the secrets of the most ancient civilization are stored, traces of which mankind has not yet managed to discover. This assumption is supported by numerous stories of local residents and testimonies of travelers of the 19th and early XX century, claiming to have heard stories about hidden underground passages leading under the Sphinx. Whether this is true or not remains to be speculated. But if even a small part of these assumptions will be true, we can expect one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in the history of mankind. According to Australian researcher Tony Bushby, it contains everything that was saved after the monstrous catastrophe that struck the Earth. Perhaps we are talking about the real flood, which destroyed ancient civilizations, leaving only scraps of knowledge that we still cannot decipher. According to his hypothesis, in the underground vaults hidden under the Giza Plateau, there may be incredible artifacts, blueprints of prehistoric jet aircraft, the technology of which far surpassed everything we know today, healing crystals that can cure any disease, as well as books containing the exact history of mankind, numbering at least 12,000 years. If this is true, it turns out that our history has been rewritten and the true roots of humanity are hidden. Of course, not always a high degree of reliability of information, but, as they say, there is no smoke without fire. If even a fraction of these hypotheses are true, then under the pyramids may indeed be ancient secrets that someone deliberately hides from society. Perhaps this knowledge is able to overturn ideas about our past, proving that in ancient times there were advanced civilizations that left behind knowledge and technology that modern scientists can only dream of. However, the mysteries of the Sphinx are not limited to this. One of the most curious moments is a clear violation of proportions between the body of the statue and its head. Many researchers pay attention to the fact that the head is much smaller than it should be, given the size of the torso. In addition, the face of the Sphinx shows clear signs of deliberate defacement, as if it was tried to remake or change its appearance. What was this done for? If you still think that the Sphinx's nose was shot off on Napoleon's orders during his Egyptian campaign, it is worth reminding. At the time of the French army's arrival on the Giza Plateau, most of the statue was still deeply covered with sand. In addition, there are sketches of the Sphinx, made long before Napoleon, on which he is already depicted without a nose. So the version that it was French soldiers who damaged the monument, to put it mildly, does not stand up to criticism. If we assume that the Egyptians did not build the Great Pyramids, but only found them and adapted them for their own needs, then we can assume that the current face of the Sphinx is the result of several alterations. It is quite likely that originally the statue looked completely different. For example, some researchers believe that the Sphinx originally depicted not a human face, but the face of the jackal-headed god Anubis, the patron of the afterlife. This theory has the right to exist, because with a dog's head proportions of the statue would look much more harmonious. If we assume that the ancient builders really depicted Anubis, why was the statue changed? Perhaps it happened during the period of religious reforms, when the new priesthood decided to erase the memory of the ancient gods. Or, more intriguingly, the builders may have left the site in a panic, leaving behind chaos and disorder. Archaeologists Mark Leiner and Zahi Hawass excavated under a thick layer of sand and found limestone blocks, randomly scattered tools, and even fossilized food scraps belonging to the workers. They dumped everything as it was, under the statue, without removing the tools or tidying up the area, as if something had caught them by surprise, and then hurriedly left and never came back. Why? What could have caused the ancient builders, who probably had outstanding engineering knowledge, to leave the site they were working on? Were they afraid of something, or were they aware of some imminent disaster? It is worth paying attention to the fact that there is a widespread belief that the Sphinx is the oldest structure on the Giza Plateau. Some scientists believe that the Great Pyramids appeared much later, and the Sphinx was created much earlier, perhaps not even by the ancient Egyptians, but by a civilization about which we have no information. In this context, the attempts of archaeologists to get inside the statue, which left behind obvious traces on its surface, are particularly interesting. The most obvious entrance, which is now sealed with concrete, is at the top of the Sphinx. Those who have investigated this area have hypothesized that the statue once had a hat, a structure carved from a single stone and held in a specially hollowed-out slot. This groove may have been the concrete patch that closes the supposed entrance to the cavity inside the statue's head. According to unconfirmed reports, inside the head of the Sphinx may indeed be a small room or a hidden space intended for unknown purposes. However, official sources flatly refuse to recognize the existence of any internal rooms in the head of the statue. The official archaeological version claims that the notch in the Sphinx's top is just the result of natural erosion, which exposes the statue to significant destruction. That's why, according to Egyptian authorities, the hole is periodically sealed with concrete to prevent further destruction of the monument. But this sounds strange, to say the least. What kind of erosion could have formed in this very place, if the climate in the region has remained arid for thousands of years and seasonal precipitation is minimal? In addition, there is another mysterious manhole, which is located behind the right ear of the Sphinx. Some photos clearly show signs of attempts to get inside through this area. Apparently, someone really tried to solve the mystery of the statue, but, for unknown reasons, this venture was not successful. Official Egyptian authorities try to skirt the issue, and any research in this area is strictly controlled. But perhaps the most interesting detail concerns geophysical research conducted in 1993 by American geophysicist Thomas DeBakey. Using seismic methods, he determined that under the Sphinx's paws was not just a dense layer of soil or groundwater, as official Egyptian researchers claimed, but some kind of large rectangular room. This discovery instantly caused a stir among independent researchers, and many of them suggested that under the Sphinx may hide the very Hall of Knowledge, a legendary repository of ancient information, perhaps left by a civilization that existed long before the Egypt of the pharaohs. However, the reaction of the Egyptian authorities turned out to be quite revealing. Almost immediately after the information about the underground room became public, any further research was immediately banned. Egyptian officials said that excavations in the area could damage the integrity of the Sphinx, which was the formal reason for stopping the work. So why were they so hasty in shutting down all research? Could it be that they are afraid that the discovered room will call into question the entire official history of ancient Egypt? If we assume that there is indeed a hidden structure under the Sphinx, then who was it built by and for what purpose? If scientists had access to this space, could there be hidden information that could overturn the ideas about ancient civilizations? So far, all these questions remain unanswered, but one thing is certain: there are too many strange coincidences in the history of the Sphinx to believe in simple explanations of official science. What do you think? I want to apologize in advance for any errors in the text or voiceover. I am still learning, and the channel language is not my native language. The voiceovers are done by artificial intelligence, so if you notice any inaccuracies, please let me know so I can fix them and improve the quality of the content. I'd also welcome your feedback and thoughts on the topic. Your support in the comments motivates me to keep finding new and exciting stories. Thank you for your understanding and participation. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the bell so you don't miss new stories.